What we are seeing, though, in the last couple of weeks is these leftist radicals who are essentially exploiting this to pursue another agenda, which is an insurrectional agenda. Well, this is a great concern to President Macron. The protest movement started in January, and we're now on the 10th day of protests and strikes, the 10th one day strikes and protests. What we've seen over the last 2 weeks, though, is that what had been a relatively calm protest movement organized by the unions is becoming increasingly violent, with radical elements, leftists, anarchists getting involved. Last Thursday's protest marches were very, very violent. So violent, I'm sure you'll recall that it prompted President Macron to cancel the King's planned state visit to France. There is a massive police presence on the streets today, 13,000 police officers being deployed around France, 5,500 in Paris, where they're expecting about 1,000 radical individuals to turn up. Sorry.
I mean, it's really, as you say, it's hugely escalating. And is this, in your view, Adam, is this contained to this real anger about the pensions reforms, or does this go deeper? Are these protests about something else?
I mean, essentially, no. Essentially, the protests are about the pension reforms. It seems probably difficult to imagine, viewed from Britain, that a nation could rise up over a retirement age of 64. But that's what's happening. President Macron wants to push back the retirement age that is now 62 to 64, and an overwhelming majority of the French population thinks that this is an attack on its fundamental rights, and an overwhelming majority of voters are opposed to this reform. What we are seeing, though, in the last couple of weeks is these leftist radicals who are essentially exploiting this to pursue another agenda, which is an insurrectional agenda. These are people who essentially want to overturn representative democracy. But I think that the real issue, I mean, yes, there's anger over inflation. Yes, there's a general feeling that this is a government that's out of touch. But if the President Macron were to withdraw his reform tomorrow, I think that almost all the protesters would go back home satisfied.
Okay, so this is largely, there is a lot of, this is the kind of the big issue which has sparked it. Now, is there any chance that Macron could drop these reforms or change these reforms? How damaging are these protests to him?
Well, they're damaging because he looks like he's lost control of the situation, that's for sure. They're damaging because he's cut himself off from not only from the unions but from the majority of public opinion, and they're damaging because it's a very, very chaotic scene in Parliament, where he no longer has an effective majority to continue governing. Will he withdraw the reforms? Well, he says no. He says he's going to stand firm. It's in the national interest to push through with these reforms, because the state pension system will be heavily in deficit by 2030. It's really a question of who blinks first. I mean, of course, he wouldn't be the first president or prime minister to swear blind that he's not going to withdraw reform and then end up by doing so. But at the moment, there's certainly no sign that he's going to do that.
And so how do you think this ends, Adam?
Emmanuel Macron's plan is to stand firm for the violence, really, which is setting in. He hopes will end up by turning public opinion. People will become exasperated with the chaos, with the anarchy, with the rubbish on the streets, with the train strikes, with all the violence they're seeing, and just say, well, that's enough. And that the pressure will become too great on the unions and the strikers, and they will go back to work. That's his hope. I've no real way of knowing whether it will pan out like that.
And final question, briefly, Adam. How how does Marine Le Pen view all of this, and is this an opportunity for her and sort of her party?
Well, I think pretty satisfied, really. She's against the pension reform, like almost everyone in France, but she hasn't taken a frontline role in it. Neither she nor her party have been involved in the demonstrations, or indeed in some of the most outrageous scenes in Parliament. I think she's played it pretty well. Um, Her aim has been since the beginning of this Parliament last year to show that she's a responsible leader, a responsible opposition leader, waiting to move into the Elysee, and I think that this is going to help her in that. It's the radical left that is seen as the people who are causing the chaos and the turbulence. She's against the reform, so she's with public opinion on that, but she's not causing disorder. So
Okay.
I think that she wins on both fronts, really.